Serious, students of Reddit who had a sexual relationship with a teacher. How did it start and how did it turn out? It started innocently enough. She was my chorus teacher, fresh out of college and only 6 years older than me. My brother WAA actually dating her friend from high school. I used to cut class and say I had a music lesson and we just hang in the music room, talk about books, music, movies. Then she started complaining about her relationship a lot, needing hugs, which I was more than happy to help with. It eventually turned to making out, and we finally started hooking up when she gave me rides home after school. I honestly felt like Elle found $1 million but couldn't tell anybody about it. It was weird. Then she got weird, asking for her hugs in front of the entire class. I knew everyone knew. I started riding home with my friends again, then she started just showing up at my house. Had a very awkward convo with my dad who knew exactly what was going on but was so impressed he just kept saying dang she's pretty. Ghosting hadn't been invented back then, but Elle did the best Elle could. Eventually she chilled out. A few months later Elle stopped by her room during our normal hang cess time, and she apologized. Told me she was just going through a lot with her crappy boyfriend and needed some attention from someone that actually liked her. We didn't talk much after that. Elle graduated soon after, but we're friends on Facebook and she actually married a decent guy and has a nice family. I'm very relieved we were never found out. It would have been devastating to both of us. I fell in love with the workshop supervisor at my university that guides the workshop that I need for my education. She is about a year older than I am. I am doing some small arts and crafts and leatherworking. She was interested in getting something and she bought something custom. I can't remember how it started out but for some reason or another, we had some drinks which ended in a night spent together and a physical relationship. We discovered an attraction to each other. She went to the faculty director with the situation and explained it. Since she cannot give marks on my work and is only a guide in the eyes of the university, they approved of the relationship. That was about 3 years ago. We are still together as I am finishing my education. The relationship moved on from the physical flirt which it all started with to something deep. We live together for 2 years now and she helps me something with running the 2 companies that I set up aside my study. When I finish my education next year I will even propose to her. I just want to clarify that at the start of this relation we well pasted the 18 years old mark. I like the part where she went clean to the faculty director even though she knew she could have gotten into some SRS trouble. Glad it worked out, man. All the best. When I was 19 I dated a professor at my university for a few months. I wasn't his student but he taught some of my friends. We met randomly at a club, and I had no idea he was a professor at my uni until a few days later when we started texting. He was really hot. He had dark hair and bright blue eyes and told me that his female students would flirt with him in office hours. He was 33, so very young for a prof but pretty old for me at the time. It was fun for a bit. He was not happy when we realized he taught some of my friends. The day we realized he taught my friends was when I was at his apartment a couple weeks after meeting and I asked to see some of his class materials. He thought it would be interesting if I could tell the difference between a BS essay and a great essay, even if I wasn't familiar with the subject. So I started reading and realized the BS essay with the failing grade had my friend's name at the top. He was very upset because apparently it's some sort of privacy violation that I was looking at a failed assignment. But I thought it was arousing that he thought my friend's essay sucked. Really played up his position of power in my mind. I like how he waltzes into ethical landmines. Had a crush on one of my grad school teachers for a year and a half. I was into everything about her. Looks, brain, everything. I ended up teaching the same subject many years later and I still use the notes and materials from her classes with my own students. She was engaged to someone else so I never even thought about anything ever happening. It was a nice fantasy. Then out of the blue, she calls my cell phone and tells me that she's thinking of getting into yoga and knows that I am into yoga. So would I get a drink with her and tell her more? I was not exactly experienced with hookups and I actually took her at her word. I went expecting to talk about yoga and go home afterwards. We ended up getting totally wasted, making out in the middle of a bar, and then I walked her home where I kept saying I'm sorry and this definitely isn't happening, and I'll just get you to your door and go home. It did happen, but the joke was on her. She got a few seconds of the worst fricking of her life and then got to listen to me in the bathroom for a while. The next day she found me in the hallway and told me that it was a huge mistake and asked me not to tell anyone. Nobody would believe me anyway, so I agreed. I can honestly say I wish the entire thing had never happened. She got married and moved on with her life. I ended up having to take her husband's class before I could graduate. She got a few seconds of the worst fricking of her life and then got to listen to me in the bathroom for a while. Frick, that stings. I'm not a student anymore. It happened in the 90s when I was probably 8 or 9 and went on for more than a year. It started with making me sit on his thighs often and I could feel his erection. I never knew what to think of it as I never got any training or attention from parents about situations of physical shaming and abuse. It went on from there. After 22 years of being a biologically straight guy, I still remember what that dirty stinking dong tasted like. The experience gave me depression and anxiety and inability to trust a relationship and get freaked out when I see a kid sitting on any man's lap. I woke up after a night full of bad dreams feeling sick in my stomach. Forgive me if I don't respond any further, and thanks immensely for your kind words and incredible support. It's important to protect and keep every child away from such negative forces, cause we remember. This just made me sick to my stomach. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I hope you're able to talk with someone about this. Maybe a counselor. Just remember that you did nothing wrong. My heart truly goes out to you. My religious studies college professor. She was hilarious and brilliant and always brought her interests up in class and they usually aligned with mine. It started off with what felt like on-topic to class discussions, then into more friendly casual conversations about books and movies. Then it definitely transitioned into flirting. Which was weird because I'm also female and had never had feelings for another girl, so I thought it could just be some weird fantasy in my head and I was just making something out of nothing. Anyways, fast forward, semester ends, I'm out of her class. I submit my final at noon. By 1 PM, she emails me my final grade and says, I'm all done submitting your grades, so you're officially no longer my student. Congrats on passing the class and good luck. So I sent back an email with a song attached and then the emailing went on from there before we officially hung out, which led to fricking, which led to a 3-year relationship. We moved in together for about a year, but it ultimately didn't work out cause we wanted different things long term, but we ended on good terms and I'm grateful for the relationship now 5 years out as it helped me realize what I want in a partner. I now have an amazing boyfriend and I heard she recently got married to a woman she started dating after me. For anyone asking about her teaching religious studies, I'd just like to clear up that my major was in religious studies from an analytical perspective. I studied cults. Specifically, all of the religious studies classes at my university were purely academic, for people that found religion interesting but didn't necessarily have to practice. She was teaching an introductory course on the philosophy of religious studies. She herself was not religious or affiliated with a religion or new religious movement. You know, it's nice to read one of these that have a good ending. Tie you for sharing. My 8th grade teacher. This was during the 80s before all the scandals, when no one really cared if a female teacher was spending a lot of time alone with one of her students. I was 14. She was mid-40s and a family friend who had known me since I was a little kid. She asked me to volunteer for a school activity that had us spending time together after class and occasionally off campus. My mom knew her so wasn't bothered I was spending so much time with her. She had always teased and playfully touched me as a kid. When we were alone after class, she started touching me more and flirting and talking about intimate things like her divorce and asking me if I had a girlfriend yet. She escalated the intimacy through the year, pushing boundaries a little more each time. We started fricking that summer. It went on for about 3 months. She ended it once I went to high school. My family moved out of state after my freshman year. I had a long talk with her before leaving and we parted on good terms. I never spoke to her again, but heard she eventually remarried and became vice principal at another school. She died a few years ago. I'm almost 50 and still think about her quite often. I was 21 and in college and using a Cupid and I matched with this cute girl who's a grad student. We hit it off and our fields of study are similar but not the same, so there's no chance there'll be a conflict of interest or anything, so we go out on a date to a dive bar, get a bit drunk, hit it off. Go back to her place to drink more and screw. A few days later the semester starts and among my classes I'm taking a statistics for people who can't do math class and who should be my teacher, but Miss let me lick wine off her tea. For like ethics reasons I couldn't keep screwing her while she was my teacher, but once the semester was over we hooked up a few more times. Miss let me lick wine off her tea made me laugh a lot. Thanks for that. I dated my high school teacher 6 months after I graduated. He was my junior year history teacher. Had a massive crush on him in class and he probably knew, but he never did anything inappropriate. Strictly a teacher-student relationship. He was 29. Got in trouble as a teacher for going against the grain. Had tattoos and a dad bod. I was super into it. Always thought he was really intelligent too, but looking back I realize he had just had more time to form his own opinions about the world. During my first semester in college I took a chance and hit him up. We kind of hit it off and dated for 6 months. 3 months in he told me that this was the longest relationship he'd had since he was in high school. I lived with him briefly during summer break in college. One night I went out with some friends and ended up getting roofied and violated. I'm not sure he understood that it was violation because he pretty much broke up with me on the spot when he got home from work and I told him what happened. I packed my crap and called my parents to come pick me up because I didn't have a car yet, lol. What a pose. So sorry that happened to you. My PE teacher was a nice man, Welsh rugby person. He taught me football in year 7, 11 years old. He taught me every year until I was 16. Some type of sport. We got on, had a laugh and a joke most of time. I stayed on at 6th form, but didn't take PE. I didn't have a lot to do with him. Last year of 6th form, Y13, I went to the pub with a friend at lunchtime. Friday. Always a Friday. This was 2003/2004. He was there with a geography teacher playing pool, so we played with them too. Had a couple of pints, went back to school, and met up with after school for a few more pints. We did this a few times in my last year of 6th form. From this learned that he was really unhappy as he was getting divorced from his wife. In the summer as I left school. July-August as I started uni in the September. I had been day drinking with some friends, not from school. When we decided to go and meet some friends the town, actually a city over, went into Weatherspoons, and who was there but my old PE teacher. The decree nice I had come through and he was drowning his sorrows with some pause. I introduced him by his first name. God knows why. He did the same, didn't mention I was a former student. Went on a huge bender. Massive. Ended up back at his place, where we ended up fricking. Did this a few times over the summer. He was 36 years old. I was 18. He was disgusted with himself. I really didn't give a frick. Most summers I came back from uni the same pattern would emerge. Until I met my now husband when I was 21. Me and boyfriend, now husband, moved back to hometown when I was 28. Husband joined a local sports social club because had no friends in the area. Said he met an older guy there who used to teach me. My husband is a PE teacher. They got on really well. Too well. So well that husband knew mate, my old PE teacher and fuck buddy, came to our wedding. So well most Saturdays me and my husband and him and his new wife and kids meet for drinks and watch the football after fixtures. Basically it turned out okay. I really thought this was going to end with some swinging. When I was 10 there was an after school program that I attended while my parents worked. It was there I met her. As a student of hers I was a class clown and ended up getting kicked out of her class and she requested to have me move to another class. Didn't think anything of it and moved on with life. Later in life I'm 22 meters and meet this gorgeous 31F who just moved into my neighborhood. We hit it off quickly. We start spending all day and night together. I practically moved in with her. One day she tells me about being a teacher and how she used to be an after school program teacher for this middle school down the road. I casually state that I had actually went to that same program. The dots hadn't been put together yet. She goes on to describe a good friend of mine from back then and says there was this one little butthole that I had to kick out of my class. With a cocked eyebrow, everything became so clear. I was that little butthole that she had to have removed from her class all those years ago. Didn't stop us. I was hot for teacher. I read when I was 10 and my heart sank. Glad this went in a different direction. My freshman psychology teacher. I caught a crush on him and he noticed. We started chatting via email, then phone calls, and before long he invited me to his house in the evenings to watch movies. We started fricking before the semester was out. Then the crap started happening. Him avoiding me at unpredictable times, dumping me then asking me to come back, acting sneaky, getting caught lying about his spending innocent time with other female students, refusing to speak to me for weeks on end, saying he was busy while hanging out with others instead but then spending weeks at a time exclusively with me. Oh, and all this after he freaking married me in secret. I spent 4 years trauma bonded to him while he in turns rejected me, seemed genuinely emotionally invested, and either pretended to like me or openly hated me. I tried to walk away and he would pull me back. It was emotional torture but I was too weak and damaged to leave for good. I became deeply depressed. My self-esteem shattered, and I contemplated suicide to the point I gave many of my cherished belongings away in preparation and withdrew socially. I was a mess. And still he continued to jerk me around emotionally. It's been a year now since we broke up, but we still talk, dragging out the rejection. I can barely sleep. I cry every morning as soon as I wake. I fall asleep crying most nights. I'm completely miserable and there are days I wish we'd never met. I'm going to start counseling soon because I can't go on like this anymore. This sounds horribly painful. I went through a similar thing. Trauma bonding is exactly what it is. There's a good book called The Betrayal Bond. Much love to you. I had a crush on a high school teacher of mine. He was brand new, not too much older than us, and seemed to be a good person. I really appreciated his moral compass. He talked a big game about morality, right and wrong, during class discussions. I graduated and moved on. Nothing weird from him in high school. Fast forward 3 or 4 years. I was studying something related to his field and decided to friend him on social media. He messaged me out of the blue. It was clear we were attracted to each other. We started dating. It ended poorly. Fast forward another decade. We got married. The formally established teacher-student power dynamic made it simple for him to control and manipulate me. He ended up controlling every moment of my day, when I got up, when I went to sleep, how I spent my money, what I was allowed to eat, what every free weekend moment entailed, pretty much all of it. He had an affair with a student teacher, who was also a former student herself. After the affair, he started telling me, for years, that he wouldn't care if I had fricked other people. He later decided we were polyamorous. When I agreed, he then immediately started screwing other former students and wives of former co-workers. It turns out that his moral compass I so admired was smoke and mirrors, hyper-inflated from my impressions of him as a student. As you can imagine, we are now divorced. Moral of the story: don't date your former teachers, folks. Power dynamics suck and they may not be the person they presented in class. I'm not sure that's the moral here. You married a narcissistic control freak. I'm not sure that automatically is connected to his teaching. 11th grade it got physical, but I'd been his favorite since 9th grade. He'd say it in front of the class, which at first made me feel weird, mostly because I didn't want anyone to hate me for it. He'd tell me how smart I was for my age, always call on me to share my opinion, always put my assigned seat at the front or right next to his desk. By the beginning of 10th grade I'd spend my lunchtime hanging out with him in his classroom, just the two of us, but he was mostly teaching me about politics or sports. In 11th grade I became his teacher assistant during my free period. It took a turn after one of his best friends got into a bad accident and ended up in the hospital. I brought him a coffee and a cookie to cheer him up. It was completely innocent. He messaged me on Facebook later that day and we just kept talking from there. I had had a boyfriend at the time for over a year, but he was a terrible influence on me and the teacher saw that, so he told me I should break up with him. I did and my teacher immediately started leaving hints. He was the first guy to call me beautiful. He made me feel like I was a beautiful, vivacious, smart young woman. I was 16. No guy my age could compete with the experience of a 30-something grown man. Of course I fell hard for his grooming. My best friend at the time knew what was going on. I had sent her a screenshot once because he said something funny. When me and her got into a fight, she showed her mom and told her everything. Her mom told the school. He was pulled out of class while I was in the classroom. Neither of us knew the sheriff was waiting in the principal's office. When I got brought out, they accidentally opened the door and I saw the look of complete devastation in his face. I knew what was happening. I know now what he did to me, but at the time I thought that I had lost the love of my life. I blamed myself for sharing the relationship with my friend. I blamed myself after I found out I wasn't the first student there were rumors or trouble about. I was just the first one with proof. The screenshot. I eventually turned on him when I realized he was just going to get away with what he did, just like he did with all the other girls. The case moved forward. It kept going for years, getting put off. The attorney lost my contact and the case was dismissed. I didn't know they lost my contact. I just thought it was still being deferred. He never went to jail. He never was charged with physical exploitation of a minor nor of a student. What he did was a felony and he should have become a registered diddler. I have no idea what happened to him. I slept with my art history professor as a freshman in college. It was a class mostly focused on Chinese and Japanese ancient art. I was having trouble with the class and all the data dump of information. I asked her if I could do some extra credit work. She said to come to her office later that day. We started talking more and more because she liked my art. Or, she was just flirting with me. Now that I think about it, well, she asked me over to her house. She wanted to show me some of her art. She was in her late 40s and I was 18. I didn't think anything about it. Then, when I showed up at her house, she said she had to go change real quick. After a minute or so, she called me into the bedroom. When I saw her in her bra and panties, laying on her bed, I quickly thought back to the time we spent together and realized that I had it all wrong. But, I was happy to be wrong at that time. People calling you lucky, but the same age difference with flipped gender, and they say the teacher should be fired and never work again. This still creepy dog. I got a really good evaluation. We didn't have grades. So it was like a 2-page report that said I have the writing skills of a grad student. I am a retard for frame of reference here. It started just like any relationship starts. You can see a twinkle in their eye. They might laugh at something you say that really isn't that funny, and you get a boner. She was way older, but really attractive, and German. So I asked her if she likes beer. She liked beer. So we went to the bar down the road. This is a beer bar. Not some hole in the wall type place. We ended up getting Weihenstephaner and Urbox, loosened up, joked around, and then I straight up told her I would like to draw her nude. She saw me drawing in class all the time and said sure. Before we even left the booth at the bar, I just said I'm not actually trying to draw you, I just wanna get naked. I have no idea why she found that endearing, but she took me to her house. I'm like, whoa, older women own homes, this is cool, and smoshed. We agreed it was a one-time thing and to be responsible about it. So for the rest of the semester I was secret agent fricka MILF. It's probably good it was a one-time thing, because if I had the opportunity I would try to move in and pay her in fellatio. It's hard out here for a millennial to get a home. Honestly, I'm 24 and I wish I could be secret agent fricka MILF. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.